Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two and more. I'm Will, and with me as always is the person who doesn't believe in your wind-based conspiracies,
Sarah.
And we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Mythwind. And we're also going to throw in the expansion, Expanded Horizons, the promo cards, and pretty much everything, because it's more of like the same.
Yeah.
Except for the Innkeeper and the Expanded Horizons.
Right.
If you're curious about our actual review and a breakdown of how the game plays and all the different characters, check out our other video, Rolling with Reviews, Mythwind. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. Mythwind is a cooperative, cozy board game with no win conditions that goes on for as long as the players want to explore the world. During the game, the players are working together to establish and build a new town. They work to achieve various goals by constructing buildings within the town, adventuring throughout the region, navigating relationships with mysterious sprites, and developing their character-specific professions. All right, Will, so how does the game change for two players?
So for two players, there is no setup changes for anything. However, it is important to note that the goal cards will list different player counts and different goals you need to reach for those player counts. There is no bot for the main game. However, if you do play the merchant, they have their own set-in bot. So just keeping that in mind, that the merchant, one of the biggest reasons why it's as complicated it is because it has its own nanamans. All right. But that's it for changes.
That's it. All right, so issues at the two-player count is the town will take longer to build because there's only two people, and it is very costly to clear the land and build
the resources, build the buildings,
and the time it takes for the building to be built. It's just going to go slower.
Yeah, the overall meta game that everybody contributes into is that whole town building. And fewer hands mean it takes longer to do anything.
Right.
And yeah, that's why it takes as long as it does.
Right. But on the other hand, what's nice about playing it two-player is, and especially if you have the Expanded Horizons expansion, you'll have 5 characters to choose from. And why this is important is each character has a very distinct play style.
Yeah, so if you absolutely hate a particular way a character plays, well, you might get stuck in a 5 or 4 player game, depending on if you have the expansion. But if you're at a 2-player count, well, you can say, no, I'm never going to have to touch that one again. I want to play this one. And Sarah can speak on that because she played the Ranger and absolutely hated it.
Yeah, it just really was everything I don't like. There was just it felt like there was no player agency. It was a more of put some stuff together and just go see what happens to you. And I didn't really care much for that.
Yeah, but then you found like the Innkeeper, which is in the Expanded Horizons, is like your favorite character. So you're like, I only want to play this.
Yep. So at 2 players, you're going to be able to play the character you want to play. Whereas at higher player count, someone might get stuck playing a character that they don't really like, which would kind of ruin this experience.
That's very true.
All right, moving on. So that's it for 2-player. It doesn't really change otherwise.
Right.
Now for accessibility.
I will say that with 2 players, what it does right is looking at the goal cards. The goal cards are still balanced to be very obtainable at 1 and 2 players. And then those numbers just start shooting up once you get to higher player counts. I'm like, ooh, I don't want to play that.
Yeah,
I don't want to play that.
Right, especially even adding 1 player to get to 3 players, some of those goals are like, I don't even think 3 players could achieve that.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, accessibility. So there are unfortunately some challenges here. One of them is just the rules. They're very difficult to learn. There's a lot of inconsistencies. Some things just don't feel completely explained. We had to look up a lot in their FAQ, which is posted online. I think they have it on their website, and I think they might have it on BGG too.
Yeah, that they're creating a living document.
Yeah, that they're doing both.
I mean, some of the inconsistencies are benign. Well, for example, there are a lot of books, and one book says for this player to start off with, they get 10 money, and 10 is in a number. And another one says the exact same thing, but it's 10 spelled out.
Right.
Small inconsistency, doesn't matter.
No.
Then it starts getting into, well, here's the breakdown of your turn. One covers all the aspects of a turn, including the elements that aren't specifically your character, but it's something all players have to do, and that's very helpful. Another character's book only covers the things that character does differently, and it's less of a handy guide. So it's starting to impact things. Then it's other times where it's just things are missing.
Yeah, things are just not there when they're supposed to be there. So yeah, so that's just an unfortunate thing. There's the main booklet that goes over the shared space, the basic rules of what everybody does, but then you also need to read your booklet for your character. But then it's like, well, then you can't help anybody else specifically learn their character unless you've played it before. So
yeah, and considering how much is in this game, the first hurdle you even have to come up with is, well, how do I unpack this and put everything in the right spot so I can find it? And the game doesn't tell you that. You have to read all the books, and you find out like the main game does get covered in the main book,
right,
but each other character is kind of covered at the end of their book, which is like one of the last things you ever read.
Right, but it's not actually the back of the book, which would have been handy, of just or even the back page of the book of this is how you put it away. No, it's somewhere in the middle back of the book.
Yeah.
So it's not something you just flip through quickly and find if you hadn't read it. So like that's the biggest part. Trying to unpack the game and then get everything organized. It's frustrating to know that you have to read everything before you can find what you're looking for.
Yes.
So a separate sheet that would have said, this is how the main box is set up, this is how the main board is set up, this is how each character's tray is set up, that would have been very helpful. So then moving on to the cards themselves, and even somewhat in the booklets, the printing is just, it's bad. There's small text, there's bad fonts, small icons, poor contrast. I mean, and here's the really weird part. The cards have a lot of wasted space.
Yeah, a lot of blank.
A lot of blank space that they could have used to enlarge the font, enlarge the icons. I mean, there was even a couple of times on the icons where it's the icon and then the lower bottom corner of the icon, there's like an arrow. I couldn't tell which way the arrow was. I had to use Will's, CCTV to enlarge it. Other people you'd use your phone, take a picture of it, and then on your phone you'd have to enlarge it to see whether the arrow's up or down. That is too small. And I think that's going to affect a lot of people who don't normally consider themselves to have bad eyesight, because you have to play this game in very bright lighting to even have a chance, because everything is printed really dark. Like I said, the icons are just complex. There's a lot of icons that are very similar to each other, but don't mean the same thing, obviously.
Yeah, and that doesn't even cover the whole font. You gave up on reading the titles of cards a long time ago. You're like, I did it, because some of them were misspelled. Some of them, it's just, I don't know what that letter is.
Yeah, it's a very fancy, curvy cursive it's just not readable. And it's one of those things, if you want people to know what the title of your cards are, don't do that. I mean, it's just, I understand thematics, but thematics should still be readable.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like I said, the icons, they're very art-based. They're really hard to parse sometimes.
And there's so many
of them. So many. I mean, the back of every character's booklet has their icons. And the weird part is some icons do cross between characters, but the characters never interact. So I think like fur or something.
Yeah, is like in the merchant and maybe the crafter.
No, I thought it was the ranger.
The ranger has fur.
Yeah,
as like a trap, and then on the other side's fur.
But I think I know I forgot to look at them. I think they're slightly similar, but I mean slightly different kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you'll have some overlap, but not like most of the time, not at all. So you've got just a wide range of icons type of thing. Yeah,
it almost felt like at some point they were like, oh, I think this should be represented as an icon. And instead of looking at anything they've done before, they're like, let's just make a new one.
Yeah.
And highlight it with a different background color to signify something different has happened. And hopefully you read everything and you know what you're looking for, because it can be tricky.
Yep.
Very, very tricky.
Very tricky. And so like we briefly mentioned, the character asymmetry can be very difficult to learn. Everybody's got a pretty thick booklet, some thicker than others, and you've got to read the whole thing so that you know, because like I said, there's a whole turn order, but then there's some characters do something extra during some of them, but not all of them. So like some people do something different at the beginning of the day. Some people do stuff different at the end of the day. And so you need to know where your character lies in what actions they do when. But unless someone's played the character before, no one can help you. And if you make a mistake, well, it's on you, because everyone else at the table is going to be paying attention to what they're doing. They're not going to pay attention to whether you're making mistakes.
Yeah, and some of those mistakes are very tiny. For example, there's a crafter, and there are 3 ways to upgrade and refine your materials. One involves using a little worker die. Okay, that's pretty simple. Move it 1 step up, refine the thing. Well, there's a ability that when you sell this item at this level of refinement, you get 1 level of movement. Like, okay, so I do it that way. And then there's this whole refine step on the crafters, which acts differently from those other 2. And
yeah, there's a lot of complexity where I think some things could have really been streamlined.
Yeah.
I think another thing, mobility. So almost every character has a lot of little pieces. I think the only one that doesn't is the Ranger. The Ranger is card-based, has 1 small piece that's just used along a track. But like the Merchant has a lot of tiny little round resources, and a lot of them, and they're being moved around a lot.
And you have 4 tracks.
Right.
And you have 2 merchants, each of those with an AI card, a customer card, resources on the merchant cards, money on the merchant cards, your own money, your own resources, resources that are the main pool, and that number can change from season to season based on where your tracks are, which you then have to reference.
Yeah.
It's a bit.
It's a bit. And then the Innkeeper in the expansion, you've got this tray where you're putting different furniture, but then you've got the visitors, which are an elongated piece that sit upright in the slot behind the furniture, and not knocking the furniture into the slot you're trying to put the customer in is very difficult. Yeah. So that can get pretty tricky as well. And then lastly, this game just requires a high investment of time, both in learning and playing. The whole concept of play until you're done with the game, well, since the game is so slow to develop, it's going to take a lot of plays or a lot of time to play it, depending on how you when you want to stop and continue it later. But anyways, it's going to take a lot of time to get somewhere.
Yeah, it was a design choice of theirs that cozy meant take your time. And you can definitely tell by playing any one of the characters, it's going to take some time to develop the character, to develop the town. So much so that it feels like barely anything's happening.
Yeah.
This is on purpose. It's their intention to do this. However, I think a few people that you even talk to are like, this game moves too slow.
Right. Everyone's definition of what cozy is and the concept of taking your time is going to be different. Most people like taking their time, but not everybody likes being forced to take their time.
Yeah.
This game will not allow you to go at your own speed.
Yeah, a good example of this is, okay, you want to build something in the town, and these buildings will require different resources that are shared amongst all players, and that's tracked on the town board. Okay, so first, grabbing the resources can be a chore because it can cost a player anywhere between 5 and 15 money, which can be harder or less hard depending on what character it is. But let's just say it does take a while to get that. So there's that time built in. All right, you spent it. All right, it's built. No. It goes in a building queue. Okay. I can just control that and just push it up and then get the thing built. No. The game tells you when that building queue moves based on weather, which is random.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so it takes 3 times to move it up to the full amount, and hopefully that'll happen in a season. So I can definitely maybe get one thing built if I built it early enough. No, stop, Sarah. You're going too fast. You also need to clear out space, which then costs you an additional ability and 5 more money to make sure you have some place to put it.
And you better have that cleared before that thing is about to pop out of the building queue.
Yes. Oh, but wait, there's more. I can't necessarily build just anything because some buildings have requirements of other buildings needing to be built. So this whole process needs to happen multiple times before the one thing I might want built can get built.
Yeah.
And that's just the metagame. That doesn't include improving a character.
Right. So time. You need to have time. You need to want to spend time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's everything that we had a challenge or issue with for accessibility. So let's move on to what it does right. Okay, these trays are mostly brilliant. There's still a few little things that could have been thought out better.
Yeah, like some of the space mostly for like...
The innkeeper barely fits in its tray, and you have to put stuff kind of upside down in the area that you've built in to make it all actually fit. But other than that, most of the characters fit pretty well, all their pieces in there.
Right. So that makes packing things away. Also makes saving the game state very, very easy.
And so setup for the next game is real easy too.
Because you actually do use the trays to play your character on.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and same for the town board. They're boards. There's 3 boards. You just stack them up and put the lid on it, and it saves it in with the tray of adventure cards, event cards, and other things like that. So it all gets saved together, and it works really well.
Yes. Of course, Learning World goes back to the problem.
Right.
But once you figure that out,
yes,
you're doing great.
The other thing is, since this is a co-op, and it's all open information, so you can help each other with concepts if you're not understanding it. It's just that might take some more time. If you're like, I really don't understand how this character works, someone else is going to need to take the time to read your booklet.
Yeah.
But you can. Nothing has to be kept secret in this game.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I will say I do really like is the diversity in the 5 character, the art. Albeit when we talked about this, we never really felt like we were actually these particular people, because for as much as we've played into it, we've played 5 seasons, we never learned anything about these characters, so they never really had much of a personality.
Yeah, that's a little strange when it comes to how much narrative is still in the game. Because you go on adventures and you have events and you make choices, but they don't really bring these characters as much as they look like they might be fleshed out.
Right. But I do appreciate that they did a lot of diversity in the art. Mm-hmm. So it's not all just, I don't know, white men, for example.
Right.
Building a town together. So you've got a variety. So I do appreciate that. All right, I think that's everything. So conclusion.
For 2 players, would you recommend?
I think so, and I kind of wonder if it's going to be best. But I mean, we've not played it with more. But I would be worried that unless you have a group of people that are very omni-gamer and are very okay with playing a lot of different play styles, you might have 1 or 2 or more people unhappy playing a character, and I think that would really ruin this experience at higher player counts.
I'd say provided you're okay with the big time sink that this game is, the fewer players, the better.
I think so too.
In fact, I think this is a fantastic solo player game.
That's true.
With 2 players being, of course, the second best.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, not really.
All right, accessibility.
I think this is going to be anywhere from mostly no to maybe. It's kind of a mixed bag depending on what your issues are. Because I think this game should be more accessible than it is.
Right.
Both in terms of just graphic design, but also cognitive overhead. Like the people who would really enjoy the game might not be able to play it without somebody who's more of a gamer who would really be able to walk them through. Because once you actually learn how it plays and you get into the swing of things, it's not that hard.
Right. It's just, well, it's going to already ask you for any one character to have an investment of maybe 3 or 4 plays.
Yeah.
Before you even get to that comfortable, this is fun now.
Finally.
Of course, they're also talking about rebalancing some characters because they think they make it too much money.
Yeah.
Because it's going too fast. You and your speedy town building.
Let's talk about that in our review video.
Yes. All right. And Sarah.
Yes.
That will do it for us.
Yes.
But let's do a little shout out because someone to help us with the pictures for Mythwind is Jay from 3 Minute Board Games.
Yes, I was very appreciative. He's talked in the past about sharing photos to make it easier for people to make videos. And so I finally took him up on his offer because I was very intimidated by all the pictures I was thinking I'd need to take for Mythwind. So he kindly shared photos, which you have seen throughout this video and you'll see in the review video. So big thank you to Jay. You should check him and his reviews out on 3 Minute Board Games.
All right. And why would you ever roll with just one when you could be
rolling with 2?
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with 2, that's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.